Welcome one more day to Space in Harmonia. This is part 2 of the previous video where we were exploring the main 9 energies of the Sephirotic tree, the tree of life, which can help us unfold the 13 aspects of the tree, which is really our true being. And in order to unfold the whole tree, we must focus on our gifts, our main purpose, which as we saw can vary depending on the person, the kind of personality that we are experiencing. Not everyone is the same. We all have differences, even though we are meant to express the universal infinite love and modified life, which brings healing, integral conscience. So we are bringing light into these aspects so that we can tackle the shadows, leave behind our conditionings. And for this, it's very interesting to see how the energies are mirrored in our experiences, our personality traits. We already saw different aspects from the energy 0, which I call infinite potential, to the energy 5. So today we are going to continue. But before that, I would like to announce that very soon I will be opening a new section in the channel. It will be dedicated to answering important questions that people make and also treat different subjects that are important nowadays in this specific period of time, which is crucial, very important. And I will be doing it with very short videos, not more than 10 minutes. This will bring a different rhythm to the channel, and maybe it can become a window so that people that are not familiar with these subjects can little by little receive pills of light, so to say. And it's very important to bring vitamins for those who usually don't have access to a different way of thinking, but we have to do it in a very accessible way because not all people have the same background. And it's nowadays crucial also to take into consideration the time people have. Anyway, today we are going to explore the remaining energies. We left with the energy 5, so let's go with energy 6. And let's have a look for a while to this configuration, which was an amazing discovery. This was an intuition that came to me while studying the relation of harmonics with the tree of life. I already gave many clues of how this is a great foundation to understand all this artistically, scientifically, spiritually. And as you see, the I amness is always in the center, in our core. The truth is pulsating from the deepest region of our being. And from there we have the purpose, the finality, the will to give ourselves. We cannot have a will fulfilled if we don't have a purpose. Therefore, this is fundamental. We need unity to recognize ourselves as an emanation of the infinite I amness with a particular purpose that has a crown of life. And this is where I place the 0, the infinite potential, to be distributed with wisdom, understanding, conscience, mercy, force, and harmonia, beauty, which is the energy 6. And as you see here in Tiferet, we are connected to many other spheres. Actually, you'll see how Tiferet is connected to 8 paths And there is no coincidence in that, because in Tiferet is where we recognize ourselves as an emanation of the Infinite One. We are paying attention to that light in ourselves, which is beauty, infinite abundance of healing, life, love, and it harmonizes the whole tree. So this is where we find the connection with the other spheres. And it's not a coincidence that this is represented with the number 6, because the number 6 somehow is balancing the triad of the spirit and the triad of matter or soul in materiality. In the middle triad, the triad of the soul. Actually, in Hebrew letters, the number 6 is represented with the letter Vav. And the letter Vav, as you will see, is connected to the so-called Son, the divine Son. Yud He Vav He, the Father, the Mother, the Son, and the Daughter. The Daughter is the feminine energy in our body, is that cosmic mother energy, the Shekinah, which is contained in our body, but it must be connected to the spiritual world in harmonia. And this is why the Son represents that connection of spirit and matter. Therefore, the energy 6 is about bringing harmonia, is about connecting heaven and earth, the two triads, and therefore we have to live that within ourselves. We cannot experience the connection with infinite love. We don't recognize that harmonia inside ourselves. Therefore, we have to realize that the main aspects of this energy 6 are elevated vision about the world. We come to elevate our experience, even though we are in darkness. We also have to accept our experience and elevate the sense we have of ourselves. Therefore, we have to recognize ourselves as pure beauty, pure love. There cannot be any trace of darkness when we are connected to the Holy One consciously. We can dispel darkness, but that belongs to the false personality, the shadows. The true personality is the expression of the Holy One in ourselves, is the universal I amness. It's not me who lives, but the Messiah who lives in me. That was said by Paul. So when we open a space, using this analogy of the zero in the crown, then we are kings of our life. We assume responsibility. We sense the pulsation of that I amness within ourselves. And that's when we can recognize the beauty that we are. This is the key of the energy 6, which is also an energy of familiar vision. We sense ourselves as part of the cosmic family, and therefore we bring compassion and care for others. If you notice, 6 contains 2, 3 times, so it implies the energy of cooperation, of helping, of intuition of what others need, but it's also 3 multiplied by 2. Therefore, we also need connecting opposites, sensitivity, fertility, to bring something for others. And the middle column is always connecting with conscience and with will. So it's what moves the entire Sephirotic tree. Without the middle column, there cannot be harmonia. This is the key, the foundation of the work. Actually, there is another sphere called foundation, which is the 9, We will see that later. It's very important to see the connections between everything. And in this case, the energy 6 brings, as I said, an elevation of matter, a familiar vision, self-acceptance, in the sense of being pure beauty. And when we fall into the shadow, into the inauthenticity, then we forget ourselves. And this is when the energy 6 turns into victimism, self-pity, self-deprecation. We can be very cruel with ourselves. And therefore, we see the world very negatively, very pessimistically, which is an aspect of that energy tree in the shadow mode. Therefore, we have to acknowledge that in the tree of life, we are no longer victims. It's true, there are attacks, especially to those of us who have light, but as they cannot do anything to us, as the adversary cannot access our inner world, those fallen intelligences attack others indirectly, but we should not get intimidated by it. There is a sort of immunity, which is an aspect of the 6. Here, we are protected. The 6 reconciles the spiritual world and the material world. Therefore, we can heal matter and have a shield. Therefore, we can elevate matter, sublimate material energies, and generate a protection. And this has to do with the energy 8, as we will see. Now, with this energy 6, in an imbalanced way, people usually feel victim of the world, and we can see that in different paths. For instance, when we come in a shadow mode and this energy dominates in our personality, what we find is the following. It's a path that lacks conscience. If you notice that Elion is missing, there is no purpose, or at least it's not so obvious here. And Tiferet is connected to Bina in the sense of lacking harmonia and lacking understanding. This is the path 6 that we find contained sometimes in some main vital paths, as those traversing the path 24-6, 2 plus 4, 6, or the path 33-6, or 42-6. Those people are going to be traversing this path. You can also have the path 15, which also contains the energy 6, because it sums up 6, but in a different way. Because the path 15 somehow has its own peculiarity. It's called the devil, because it comes from diabolos, which in Greek means accuser. And those who have the energy 15, having as base the energy 6, have a very accusating mind with others, with the world, with themselves. Having lots of energy, squander lots of energy. Whereas those traversing the main path 6, as the 24-6 or the 33-6, they tend to experience forms of bullying in childhood, abuse, or if they have the energy 6 hidden in some structure, as the psychoenergetic structure, my experience is that they tend to live difficult experiences, abortions, problems with the reproductive organs, and sometimes this is something they inherit from their parents or their ancestors in general. So they have to heal that energy, which is broken from the past. And in order to be healed, they have to acknowledge themselves in Tiferet, in beauty. The most important thing that you can do is find a place of stability and acknowledge that there is something in you which is completely healed, is pure life, pure love. And you can direct that light anywhere in the body, anywhere in the soul. This is something we do in some of the modules of the course Harmony Therapy. And as I said, this would be like an introduction of one of the modules. And it's very important to understand how we can assume that we have a crown of life. Keter. When we have the crown of life, we are in charge of our own experience. We don't have to look for external deities, external masters. No, the master is in you. And it's an expression of the Holy One because he has been giving these gifts to us for a reason. He wants to grow through us, not having us as worshippers or slaves or people that cannot do anything if they don't perform certain rituals. That belongs to the old paradigms of fallen humanity. And as you know, that never brought healing. It brought chaos, it brought misunderstanding. This is why this sphere of understanding is usually obscure in this path 6. Now, due to the wounds with this energy 6, the person can also live certain skin rashes or addictions to food, trying to cover inner voids, trying to receive this love which was felt during childhood, receiving milk, sweets, so the person can get addicted to starches, complex sugars, and also certain forms of sweets or even dairy products. And this can cause intolerances that manifest on the skin, develop skin problems, rashes, immune disorders, diabetes. There can be allergies because of different situations where there is a bioshock, a trauma, and the body manifests that as telling that there is a disconnection in the soul. So the wounds must be healed inside first. We should never look for the answers to physical problems in the physical world. The roots are in the spirit and the soul. The spirit is broken, the soul is completely wounded. So it's normal that this gets somatization in the body. There can also be attraction of abusive relationships. In the path 6, for instance, a person might want to be with a partner that covers certain needs the person feels. And this can cause the opposite. Some women attract men that are abusive and the other way around. Maybe they self-deprecate, they don't love themselves, so they attract someone that insults them, deprecates them. I know a case of a woman who is traversing this path 6, and she was mistreated by her husband, and she's no longer with him. But that was due to the way she treated herself. She had food addictions, and she eventually developed a very complicated diabetes with infections in the feet. So we have to go deep inside first, recognize that we should never look for love or recognition in others when we can find the infinite love within. The whole universe is loving through us, loving us. But we must open so that infinite energy can flow. So those traversing the path 6 come here to harmonize, to elevate the world, to show the beauty in the context of family or in the context of relationship. It's a path where we work with the energy of love, and especially those who bring the path 33-6, because that's a master number. And it implies having a sense of cosmic family, as I said, and shared nutrition, mercy, compassion to integrate others or help others overcome certain wounds. We have to heal the inner child in this path. Whereas those traversing the path 15 might have to be more focused on transforming their devilish mind, their accusative mind, all those thoughts full of accusation. It's intense in a certain way, the path 15. And it's 3 multiplied by 5. So it integrates the energy 3 and the energy 5. It requires lots of discipline. In a sense, the energy 6 can also be seen as 1 plus 5, or 3 plus 3, or 2 multiplied by 3. There are different ways of approaching these spheres, and we can find many other aspects by thinking this way. You will notice this is even richer than the conventional approaches of numerology or personality types, as those popularized with the versions of the Enneagram. It's true, there are personalities that can be expressed in the Enneagram and even in the Sephirotic tree, but we must bring the I amness. The I amness is the true center. This is why I place the I am in the center of the Sephirotic tree. Otherwise, we fall in the mistakes made by most teachings. Even the Enneagram is incomplete because it doesn't give you a reference to the connection with the cosmic world. Therefore, here you have an amazing tool if you think in accord with the natural ways of the universe, the logos, the universal intelligence. Now we must take into consideration that everything is completed in 7 steps. There are 7 whole tones in 1 octave, 7 days of the week. There are 7 stages of digestion from the mouth to excretion, and so on and so forth. So we must respect all the processes of growth. Therefore, the energy 7, which corresponds with the sphere of Netzach, victory, success, has to do with respecting the cycles, with having a sharp mind that can penetrate into the details of reality. It has to do with focusing with the mind in order to direct, conduct energies. And it has to do with patience as well. So those who have the basic 7th energy, either in the day, the month, the year, or even in the main vital path, will have the possibility of accomplishing their goals with focus, with a certain conduction, but they also have a tendency to become impatient, wanting to arrive earlier to the results. So they can also overload themselves with work. They become anxious. They also can become a bit paranoid because their mind sees details that sometimes are trifling. They have little importance, but they think these details are of extreme importance, and they can become very picky, very maniatic, or even obsessed with strange coincidences, messages. For instance, there can be people traversing this path several times, and they can see anything happening in their life as a message from the divine, and they seek for an answer. But this usually leads them to a state of insecurity, lack of understanding, anxiety, which is an aspect of Netzach. Netzach are the emotions, the harmonia of the emotions. So they must find patience, trust in the processes, understand that everything takes a process of growth, and we have to move with the waves of vibration, helping the vibrations get completed. Because in this world, when the appropriate energy is not applied in the right moment, then octaves get broken and they don't develop. So instead of full octaves, we get broken octaves. This is something I explain with the trees. The trees are a perfect example. Some trees never grow, but because they don't receive the necessary nutrients, or they get cut off. In this world, things like that can happen, but we have an inner octave. Remember that the middle pillar has 7 aspects. We have the I amness in the center, then our will, purpose, then our crown, our divine conscience with wisdom and understanding, our self-recognition in Tiferet, the foundation, the energy of growth, and finally, the possibility of realization in Malkut, which is this sphere right here. Therefore, we have these 7 aspects within ourselves which lead us to success from moment to moment. Success is not in the future. Success is conquering our shadows, conquering our insecurities, fears, and being able to expand our love, our light, to share all our potentiality, even from now. It doesn't matter, you cannot express infinitude completely. You go step by step, and each moment is perfect for you. Therefore, this has to do with the number 7, the mind, which is very sharp, respecting the growth, but also focusing the energy where it must go. Where you focus your attention, you lead your intention. Where attention goes, energy and intention flow. And we can do that consciously. This connects us to the following energy. Now, before going into the 8th, let's notice that this path 7 can be lived traversing the path 16, for instance. Let me show you. The path 16 is this over here. And then we would have the path 7 in itself, which is this one. It's an ascending path from Geburah to Binah. You have the explanation of these paths in the other channel, Vital and Harmonia. I also have a module to explain all this in detail. And it's very interesting to see how different path brings different experiences, and people usually live 3 of these paths associated to the birth date, the main path, and also to the name given by the family. This is because of vibrations, and there are many ways to confirm that, to prove this is science, it's not fantasy. And it's very useful for therapy, for healing wounds that very often are deep in our psyche. and unless you see yourself in the Sephirotic tree, it's very difficult to untangle certain knots. So this is not for divinating the future or for controlling reality and transforming everything so that we get the wishes of our life. No, this is to become what we have to be. And if there are traumas, this must be healed. These are healed in our true soul, which contains the 13 aspects. Now, the energy 7, as I said, is present in the path 16 because it sums up 7. This is about building up a solid individuality, personality. The tower is called. And the 7th path is the chariot. The driver of the chariot was an archetype, even in the Tarot. The 22 archetypes of the Tarot, the so-called way in French, are a representation made by Kabbalists in the Renaissance to summarize the universal knowledge in pictures, in Kabbalistic principles. And it's an approach that is very useful because it brings images, it brings numeric wisdom. Numbers are energies, qualities, functions. And it's amazing the accuracy when you place the Sephirot connected to the appropriate paths. And as you see, the path 16 is in the triad of matter. So it's working with something that has to do with the personality in the body. Those paths that are in the middle, the 8, the 9, the hermit, or the 11th are the triad of the soul, and the triad of the spirit are paths that we all bring. The path 0 is known as the original child or the madman. It depends in which mode you are operating or living. We all are a bit crazy when we follow the impulses of old Adam, the fallen Adam. But we can also be magicians or sorcerers with the energy 1, or having this connection with the energy 2, the path 2, that goes from Keter to Tiferet. Now, those are just basic ideas to indicate that we all go through these 3 paths, the 0, the 1, and the 2, and then 3 additional ones. And when we illumine the paths we are traversing, then we get the full tree of life. And this can be done in our experience. Now, you can also have a main path 25. The unit indicates the particularity, and the descent indicates the general aspect of the path. You can also have a 34 or a 43. I know several people traversing the 34, and that's a very reconciling path. It must bring aspects of materiality with spirituality. So this brings this perfect 7, because it's the perfect equilibrium of spirit and matter. But notice you have to take into consideration the 6, the 5, the 4, 3 plus 4, 7, 1 plus 6, 7, 2 plus 5, 7. So play with that in your mind so you can get more aspects. And now let's focus on the sphere of order, the splendor of truth, because this contains the energy 8. And it has to do with connecting the infinite abundance with the finite world. Actually, the number 8 resembles the symbol of infinity. The infinite abundance is the expression of truth, but this must be somehow distributed equally. So the energy 8 has to do with abundance, harmonious distribution of that abundance, with logistics, with true justice, harmonious justice, and also with protection. The path 8 actually has to do with spiritual protection. Those traversing the path 8 are people that seek for justice, and they can fall into tensions. We will see why. Because the energy 8 can also become obscured. And instead of harmonious abundance, we would have an abundance that flows, destroying everything. The person might have lots of energy, but squanders that energy in things that become destructive. This is because the path 8 traverses between Chesed and Geburah, mercy, expansion, and force, leading that energy through a certain way. So we need two sides. An excess of expansion can lead to cancer, for instance. If the cells grow without control, we have cancer. Therefore, we need that justice of Or, which is the splendor of truth in ourselves. And you might wonder how we bring that balance. And the answer is with pure honesty, with authenticity, which is actually the main aspect of the sphere of Or, the splendor of truth. We have to be authentic, distributing our gifts to protect others. The energy of protection is very important. Otherwise, this path becomes very negative, and the energy 8 turns into ambition, seeking for power or wealth, seeking for domination. Is very territorial. You also have blind justice, the application of rules to judge. People feel victims, betrayed even by what they consider to be God, punished by a dictatorial God. People traversing this energy in shadow are very judgy. They are constantly saying what is good or bad, and they accusate people in a certain way. They think they are good, in quotation marks, but this is because they don't see their negative aspect. They can be very despotic and tyrannical in the extreme cases. So they use a violent language, a language full of judgment, and they can also squander all this wonderful energy that should be used to protect the world and themselves. Notice how the path 8 is very close to Tiferet. So there must be an harmonia, a union of mercy and force. Force is one of the main four virtues, just as justice, prudency in the hermit, and temperance. With temperance, we avoid getting despotic, over controlling, which is an aspect of the seven. The seven tries to get the reins in order to get results. And the path 8 propels people to impose certain power or vision, or getting something, having what they consider to be fair. Some people traverse path 8 in common when they are married, for instance, couples. This is very typical. They traverse this path and they get into quarrels, fighting for the custody of sons, the property, the goods in general, and they become very judgy. Now, you can also have the energy 8 hidden in the path 17, known as the star, represented with a naked woman, because it has to do with emotionality, healing all the emotions. And this path 17 needs protection. This is why the energy 8 is very important. In a certain sense, it needs the energy of Tiferet, Harmonia, and the energy of cooperation, Binah, which is the second sphere as we count it. In this representation, we have Keter, Chokmah, and Binah with 1, 2, and 3. But this is because it's explaining different aspects. Whereas in my representation, we use numbers as energies, functions, so that they tell information as well. It's a way of uniting the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic aspects with the emotional and noetic aspects. I call it ENA-VAC. ENA is emotional, ethos is our character, the N stands for noetic, the mind, the A stands for harmonia, and VAC for visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. So this is a way of using the 8. The 8 is an energy of expressing the spiritual in scientific terms. Just as the 7, it has an aspect of consciousness and conscience applied to matter. So with the 8, we unite heaven and earth, but the 8 has the aspect of logistics as well. And this scheme is very much connected to this understanding. The harmonic mirrors, as I call them, they all sum up 9, 1 plus 8, 9, 2 plus 7, 9, 4 plus 5, 9, 3 plus 6, 9. And 9, we will see, is the stone we must transform, the box of treasures. And with the energy 8, we are somehow bringing protection, bringing connection, distribution, and also healing. This is why you can find the main energy 8 in the path 26, 2 plus 6, 8. This is a path very much connected with the tetragrammaton, whose value is 26. This is a way of helping others to stand up, to recover their self-esteem. So those traversing the path 26-8 are here to protect others, to help others walk if they can't because of certain trauma. Actually, I know a person that walks that path, and her job was to take care of people with mental issues, handicaps. And that's one of the characteristics of that path. However, I have also found people traversing that path and they don't know what to do in life and they are very stagnated. So economy abundance doesn't flow. Having the possibility of accessing a tremendous force and abundance in the domains of materiality, economy, energy, relationships, wisdom, they get stagnated because they don't recognize themselves, they don't know what to do, and they get stagnated into the comfort zone because this path implies transformation. You must connect yourself with your wisdom, but also with discipline. 5 plus 3 is 8. Now you can bring 8 in your day or your year. I was born in a day 8. So my spirit has the tendency to protect. The energy 8 is very important to protect other spheres, especially the sphere of Tiferet, because that's where the shadow grows stronger. And we need self-protection. So the energy 8 brings not only protection for the world, but especially for our own being. It's an energy of fair justice with ourselves, because we can be very self-deprecative, self-criticizing, and this sinks us down. There is no advancement possible if we are constantly saying, I can't do this because I'm bad, I'm not enough, I am a sinner, an inferior creature. Things like this, which are just falsehoods imposed on the human mind. So this is a sphere to become free from all lies, all deceptions, especially self-deceptions. And this is what was communicated by the Master. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. This is because it belongs to the sphere of Or, the splendor of truth, which also leads to transformation. And this has to do with the sphere 9. The foundation in the Sephirotic tree is associated with Yesod, which means foundation, and it was also known as the stone of Peter. The Master said, upon this stone I will build up my congregation of the called ones. They translated church crazily because church comes from Circe, which is the goddess of cycles and reincarnation in the Greek mythology. And church has nothing to do with a congregation of call out ones, those who are called because they have divine conscience, sensitivity. So ecclesia means to gather those who must transform the world. This is why the stone of Peter is the foundation. 9 is consciousness and conscience in matter, in the triad of matter. Therefore, there must be a very intense inner work. And we find that in different paths associated with this energy. And the main path with this basic energy 9 is the hermit, from Tiferet to Hesed, mercy, joyfulness. So there must be harmonia inside so that forgiveness and the joy of life can manifest for others. This is a path of tremendous experience. That's why it's represented with an old man with a white beard and a candle to illumine the world. 9 is the end of a cycle. We are 9 months in our mother's womb. And it indicates the person can go through many different experiences to acquire prudency and manifest wisdom with understanding. 3 multiplied by 3 gives 9, so it contains the energy 3, wisdom and understanding. But this must be in a process of integration. The energy 9 is about wisdom, integrity, the completion of true values. We have to be honest, we have to be prudent with what we do, neither reckless nor trapped in the zone of comfort, in the comfort zone. And we also need to transform the shadows. The hermit is in his cave, but he must come out of the cave to illumine the world. Otherwise, he remains with the bats and worms and monsters. And this is why the path 9 can be problematic. The person can develop certain psychic disorders, fears to his own light or her own light, fears to the world. There can be a load of energy which is untransformed, so an overload of energy. There can also be lack of integration into the world. The person feels completely out of place without knowing what to do. Some of them can even end up begging on the streets or working in something which is not so much connected to their passion, and this leaves them in a state of absolute depression, leading them to suicidal thoughts even. Now, the path 9 is intensified in the path 18, which is the path of the moon. I place it here from Yesod to Netzach, even though in this scheme it's placed from Netzach to Malkut. But the path 18 is karmic. It's not a path like the 9. And this means the person is suffering the consequences of something that was done in other existence. And usually those with a karmic path 18 as main path suffer certain obstacles that are difficult to overcome if this is not illumined, if the sphere of Yesod is not properly transformed. Because this is the box of treasures. This is where many gifts are hidden, because it's creative vital energy, the energy of the Shekinah, which must be transformed and converted into garments of light that cover us, protect us, help us receive the abundance. So if you have a main path 18, you will probably experience great obstacles in the domain of the psyche, probably. It might be a person that has to visit a psychiatrist. I know a person who traverses this main path 18, and she visited different psychiatrists and doctors to find out what was going on with her. But these experts didn't understand that she was in a spiritual process of transformation. So she had to find out how to make sense of the world, how to come out of darkness by transforming those energies using the mind, the wisdom and understanding, and also sharing it with others. It's very important to share your experiences when you are traversing a path 9 or a path 18. There are other paths like the path 27, which is more esoteric. 27 is the esoteric student path par excellence. It might be a person obsessed with understanding these connections. We can also have a path 36, which also sums up 9, and it has the energy 3 and the energy 6. So there are going to be wounds to be healed, wounds of childhood maybe, abuse or mistreatment. And the 36 path is where the person must overcome certain fears and sense of scarcity, sense of incapability by enhancing sensitivity, fertility, relation with everything, connectivity. But the energy 9 is always on the base. So the important thing is to understand that this Yesod, this foundation, is where the heavy weight of the tree of life rests. If the foundational stone is not properly worked, forget about the well-functioning of the whole tree. You get the incomplete tree, which is a tree without conscience, a tree where you might have data, that intellectual information, and therefore people behaving like crazy robots, which is actually what governments want. They want puppets, sheep, and some of them might even believe they have knowledge about this wisdom, but they don't understand anything because they don't have true understanding nor true wisdom. They have fallen wisdom. And very often the 9s can fall very low because of this distorted wisdom, just as the 5 path of the Hierophant, which can become a dogmatic high priest, imposing doctrines or religions that have destroyed the world. So it's very important to transform those creative energies in the path 9 or 18, or even 27 and 36. There must be a creative integration of all archetypes or experiences. All that must be communicated as well, because the energy tree is about sharing, communicating, and the tree is also about transformation, transmutation, alchemical transmutation of matter and energy. In a sense, you have the energy 6 and the energy 3 together. You can even find 9 as the apex of the Enneagram, which is incomplete. When you look it in 2 dimensions, or even in 3, you need more dimensions to understand the Enneagram. And this is something I will do maybe in the future, connecting the Enneatypes or personalities with this wisdom, because there are certainly basic personalities and basic sub-personalities which fit with these energies in the Sephiriotic tree. But for the moment, I think we have tons of information. Remember that not all paths are karmic. People are obsessed with karma, but in the Messiah, all karma is gone because you have wisdom and understanding. Therefore, you operate from the spirit of life, in which there are no longer sins or faults. You can drag certain consequences in your body, in your experiences, but never forget about this dimension in yourself, which is beyond space and time, and it's your pure being with the certain aspects. And wisdom and understanding cancels the punishment of existence, which sometimes can be very heavy and very painful. And therefore, we should not worry about karma anymore, even when you are traversing karmatic paths such as the 12 or the 18 or the 20. That's also a karmic path. This path 12, for instance, feels completely hung up. That's why it's represented with a hung up man upside down. And it's about accepting things. In principle, cannot be changed, but you can turn the situation by a shift of consciousness and conscience. Just as the path 18. There you have 2 hermits that must come out. You must bring the hermit of your spirit and the hermit of your soul to manifest soundly in the world. You might have the karmic path 20, and therefore you are called to express some truth that you bring in your heart into the world in Malkut. But you need the other energies, just as any other path. And in that path 20, the person might be felt compelled to explore even the mysteries, the deep, but without some of the handicaps of the path 12 and the path 18, which can be complicated if the person doesn't assume a greater responsibility to bring light to the world. And I could be saying more things, but I don't want to make the video too long. Remember, I will leave a summary of these principles in the blog. Actually, you already have a few. I might add additional information. So if you have questions or remarks to make, leave them in the box of comments. This helps to promote the channel. If this was inspiring, give thumbs up, share the video. Remember, this is not a very popular view, but over time, more and more people will awake, and we need this view, especially in this frame of time from 2020 to 2030, because that's where the future of humanity is somehow determined for some timelines. And we can live this experience in shadow or in light. We have been given these gifts of light, so let's digest everything like the hermit. The hermit is about digesting the experiences and sharing them. But we also need the rest. Don't conform yourself with one path or one type of personality. We have all the energies, we have all the aspects to be manifested. So if you have shadow in some sides, illumine them with the others, because all energies are contained in the other energies. One is everything. This is an echad, a unicity, and that's the magic of the true divine verb, Yud Ke Vav He, which in shadow can be destructive. I form light and create calamity. That's in Isaiah. And don't see this as an expression of an external entity. Everything is in us. We have the whole universe within, and therefore we are also responsible to handle the whole universe in our hands, in our hearts, in our minds. So thank you very much for listening. Let's keep opening a space to distribute our gifts, expressing more and more that infinite love and modified life, integral conscience, and deep, blissful serenity.